Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Now it's been a little bit since I have made a video on here, so I do apologize for that. To those who are coming back, you can definitely tell that everything is very different colors, different theme, different vibe, everything. So a lot has gone on the past couple of months, but that is a different video for a different time. Today's video, I want to talk about a really fun reading challenge that I had just finished just a few days ago that has been put on by none other than Sarah Color, who, yes, happens to be my mother. And this was her very first reading challenge for October that she has put together. So I was very excited to join. So before I go any further, just as a little side note, if you see me looking off to the side of the video, it is because I have all of my notes set up on my iPad here, just so that I don't forget what I need to talk about, as I've never made a video for the booktube side of YouTube. So bear with me everyone. I'm new to this. So let's get into today's topic. I want to go over quickly the 5 prompt list that is a part of the challenge. I will put my mother's channel down in the description below to where you can find the video where she talks a little bit more about the challenge. She has better information about it, so you can look into that further. But I just wanted to give that list real quick. The 5 challenges, I guess you could say, is the first one is to read an American Gothic classic. The second is to read a Gothic classic that is not from your country, so not published in your country or not set in your country, I guess. The third is to read a Gothic short story. The fourth is to read a Gothic poem/play. And then the fifth one is to watch a Gothic film. So I thought that was kind of interesting, as a lot of times, a lot of these Gothic films are based off of books. So in a way, it works for a book challenge. One thing I did forget to mention is that I only have one of the 4 books that I read during this challenge, as the other books were library books. So, and I've already taken them back before I even made this video, so I didn't even think about that. So I do apologize, but I will put the names of the books in the video, maybe even a little picture of one of the covers, just to kind of give a visual. I do have one of the books that I read in my own collection, so I will show that. But lesson learned for making future booktube videos is to have the books with you before you make the video. Now, finding these books for the reading challenge was a challenge within itself, as a few of these I had never heard of, or because of the time period that I chose was a little difficult, as usually when you think of, you know, Gothic literature, you think of the Victorian times, as that's when it became super popular to have all of the novels written in this horrific setting, you know, things like Frankenstein and Dracula. And to find books that were either published or set in the Edwardian period was a little bit more of a challenge, but I enjoyed that challenge and I was very happy and very set with what I chose for my reading list. So here is my reading list for the Gothic Classics reading challenge. So as I mentioned before, this is a reading challenge that was put together by my mother, Sarah Color. It is called the Gothic Classics Reading Challenge, or Gothic Classics October. And the challenge is to follow a 5-list prompt in reading Gothic classics. The era is your choice. So I decided to read any books that were either written in or published in the Edwardian period. That was a little difficult, as some of the prompts in the list, the books that I searched for, I'd never heard of, or were from countries that I was not familiar with that had a lot of Gothic literature. So that just goes to show that I need to read more. This should have been a little bit easier, but then again, you start fresh, you start new somewhere. So the book that I chose for the first one, which was to read a Gothic American classic, was The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Now, I had never heard of this authoress. It seems that she was pretty popular in the Edwardian period, though, for different reasons than what this video is about. But I've actually really enjoyed reading this little, I guess it could in a way be a short story, but I really liked the mindset of the main character, where she was going insane. And I know that there's two different ways to look at this story. I looked at it in the ways of a mental breakdown for this main character, as she was confined to one room. She wasn't really allowed to leave, and at that time it was really hard to entertain yourself with things if you weren't allowed to leave the room. So I can imagine she was just sitting at a window for hours and hours. It didn't really go into that much of a description at what she really did, as it was more of a journal entry type of way to write the book. But I just really enjoyed the very slow descent into insanity that this character went through. So I highly recommend it if you want to read an Edwardian psychological. It was more psychological than it was bodily horror, as a lot of what people think of, you know, the horrific things of Gothic books. But really, that doesn't really set into the Gothics either. You know, I'm thinking things of like Frankenstein or Dracula, where that's more body horror, but it doesn't really fit into what Gothic films or Gothic books are. And the Gothics are more just like the mysteries of, you know, a home, or the mysteries of a family. And this one definitely had a mystery in the room that this main character was confined to. The second book that I read was for the book that was not from your own country, and it is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, and that is the book that I have. It is a little hard to see with the lighting, but this is a book by Robert Louis Stevenson. It is a collection of a few of his stories. And I want to show you the little art piece of him in here, which is really neat. No, it is not signed by him. I already looked, and many of these copies had a print of the signature, so that's kind of sad. But you can see that it was published in 1917. So perfect for my Edwardian era challenge. And like I said, it has many different little stories and things in here, but this is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I really enjoyed seeing this photograph of Richard Mansfield playing both Jekyll and Hyde. So, real photo. And I thought that was really neat. So that kind of helped in a way. I'm a very visual person, so it kind of helped to see this visual of the two characters. Very horrifying. Now, I have been wanting to read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for years. I remember growing up hearing, you know, the phrase, you know, Jekyll and Hyde, but never really understood why the story was so horrific, other than I knew that someone changed between, you know, things. I may or may not be giving spoilers, so if you haven't read the story, then I would go ahead and skip from here. I knew sort of the idea of the story, but I didn't know the details. And so to read this was definitely a childhood goal accomplished. But what I got from this was actually a quote, or maybe two, that I wrote in my commonplace book, and I want to read that to you all. And let me know what your thoughts are about these quotes in the comments down below. It took me a moment to find the quote, but this is near the end, and this is Jekyll talking about Hyde within himself and how Hyde taunted Jekyll, and this is what he said. Hence the ape-like tricks that he would play me, scrawling in my own hand blasphemies on the pages of my books, burning the letters and destroying the portrait of my father. And indeed, had it not been for his fear of death, he would long ago have ruined himself in order to involve me in the ruin. But his love of life is wonderful. I go further. I who sicken and freeze at the mere thought of him, when I recall the objection and passion of this attachment, and when I know how he fears my power to cut him off by, I'm not going to say the word, I find it in my heart to pity him. And I just found that very interesting, reading that as, you know, this creation is living within this main character, and even though he tried to destroy the character by ending its life, he pitied it because this creature wanted to live. You know, it had life within him. And so I found that quote very interesting. And so it is the one thing that has stuck out with me since reading this book. Reading this, I definitely can imagine what the Edwardians were feeling with this very sci-fi-esque type of book. That's one of the things that I love about Stevenson's works, is that they are very scientific. He was a very scientific man. And so to have this fantastical version of characters, you know, bouncing back and forth between different mindsets, and there's a horror monster and a innocent man, and all of these just interesting things. It just makes the Gothic book even more intriguing and more horrifying, especially if you were new to all of this at this time. So I highly recommend reading it and really immerse yourself into it and kind of just put your mindset to what it would be like you as a Edwardian man or woman at this time reading this book for the first time. So the next book that I read was for the Gothic short story, and I decided to read The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. I've been wanting to read Poe's works for a very long time, so it was really nice to read rather a story than his poems. I've known him more for his poems than his short stories, so The House of Usher was quite a delight to read. I thoroughly, actually even more than thoroughly, really enjoyed reading this book. I liked the mysteries of the house, and that the house almost seemed like it was alive, and the way that the house felt alive made one of the characters go completely insane. And I'm just imagining this, you know, Mr. Usher, the way how he looked and just the craziness in his eyes. And it was really interesting. I have always enjoyed more psychological types of, I guess you could say, horror than the bodily horror when it comes to Gothic books. They're just, you know, anything horrifying in general, because the mind is alive and it's working, and so the things that a human mind can come up with has always intrigued me. So to read this book and to see how a perfectly well-working brain goes completely haywire, it was really interesting. So I liked it. I really enjoyed reading it. And in the same topic as Edgar Allan Poe, I also read Annabel Lee for the next one on the list, was to read a Gothic poem or play. I was going to read The Raven, which I know that that's what Poe is famously known for, but I wanted to read something that was not so popular. And when I was doing some research about which Poe poems, try to say that 5 times fast, which Poe poems to read, Annabel Lee kept popping up. And so it was very short, but it was interesting. And if you haven't read the poem, I recommend going reading it, and then I would love for you to come back and leave a comment on my video on what you think about it. I may be a little bit of a macabre type of person, but I kind of liked this poem. I liked the way how it ended. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm a lovesick romantic, but that was just interesting. And then last but not least, the film that I watched for the Gothic film was The Spiral Staircase. And this is a film that was made in 1946, but it was set in 1901. And it has a very Jack the Ripper type of vibe to it. I'm not gonna go too much into the film because I want you guys to go and watch it. But I was hooked the whole entire time. I was afraid I wasn't going to like it, which is why I had a few other films on my list. I had Rebecca on my list. That's one of my absolute favorite Gothic films, both me and my mother. I had Edward Scissorhands, and then I also had Phantom of the Opera from 1921, I believe is when that one came out. But I've already seen all of those, and so I decided to choose the Spiral Staircase, and I am glad that I decided to watch the whole thing through, because it is a new favorite old Hollywood Gothic film favorite. I really liked it. I recommend watching it for sure. And that, without further ado, is the Gothic Classics Reading Challenge for October. I definitely enjoyed doing this reading challenge. It really, how to say it, challenged me to go into literature that I was not super familiar with, but also just to encourage me to read more, especially with a due date. I work really well with having a time limit of things. I used to be an avid reader when I was younger, and then I got hooked on the internet and just that all went out the window. So this encouraged me to get back into reading more, and now I am currently reading another Gothic book, which is Frankenstein, and I will put that in a video on what my reading list is for the rest of October into November. So yes, I am joining into the booktube community now. I'm super excited and I think it's gonna help me want to read more, because I need to come make my book report. So let me know what you guys think of these books in the comments. If you have read them, please let me know your input and your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. Please make sure to check out my mother's channel down below. Like I said, it is in the description box. Also, if you want to find me on other social medias, I will have all of those down below. They are also linked in my About section on my YouTube page. So thank you again so much, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!